Great. Thank you, Justin, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Meredith Dodson. I'm with the Coalition on Human Needs. I use she, her pronouns, and it's really an honor to be with all of you along with this fabulous panel that we have today in this session focused on the Farm Bill. Let me just flag who our panelists are in brief, but I urge folks to check out their full bios, which is on the conference website. So we have Maureen Bowling. Maureen is joining us from Lexington, Kentucky. Maureen is a social worker, and she is a part of the Results Experts on Poverty cohort. I've known Maureen for quite a while, and she is just a passionate leader who I think really strongly makes the case for, the investments in children and families, but also, the policy changes that are needed to make programs work effectively. And it's always a privilege to get to be in a shared space with Maureen. So, and then we have Karen. Karen Ehrens is new in her role, which I'm so thrilled about, with as a U.S. policy manager at the Alliance to End Hunger. And Karen, actually, Justin, we might need you to mute. Karen is brings a long history to this work. I think the Alliance, I've worked with the Alliance to End Hunger for a long time, and the Alliance is very lucky to have Karen in this role at a really important time for the Alliance and Alliance members and the broader hunger-free communities network to have Karen's stellar advocacy in play here. And then we have Ellen Nissenbaum. Ellen is no stranger to many of you. Her role now is Senior Advisor at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. Ellen has been a mentor to many of us in the advocacy world over several decades of being a leader, sharing her expertise, so generously with so many of us. And it's really a thrill to have, you all are very lucky that we have Ellen's insights as a part of the conversation today. So that's a little bit about our panelists here. So as we get started today, we'll get more in detail about what's in the Farm Bill, what the process is looking like, why this matters, how you can raise your voices, etc. But I just thought I would just give a bit of context to start the conversation about why the Farm Bill is important. So the Farm Bill is one of the more critical pieces of legislation that Congress takes up. It's something they only take up theoretically every 5 years. So the fact that we're in a conversation about the Farm Bill, along with potentially other changes to nutrition programs, we have kind of a unique moment right now to shape the debate. And in particular, the Farm Bill as legislation not only governs a wide variety of agriculture policies, but also is the place where Congress often makes large-scale changes to SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. There is some chance we will see action on the Farm Bill during this kind of post-election session, what some in Washington, D.C. call lame duck. As a reminder, the members of Congress that were in office the last 2 years are the ones who are back in D.C. right now and passing legislation or taking up legislation between now and the end of the calendar year. So that includes people who are retiring. For instance, Senator Stabenow, who I know you all got to hear from earlier. Also, members of Congress who were defeated. They are still in office right now and can play a crucial role if you happen to live in a place with one of those senators or representatives who won't necessarily be returning back next year. And in the debate about the Farm Bill, your voices matter. The folks in local communities talking about the importance of investments in nutrition, about what Congress should prioritize with our taxpayer dollars, you can make a huge impact on these policy debates. So that's why we wanted to make sure we gave you the latest information to do just that. So first, we're going to start with Karen. Karen, why don't you walk us through a bit more about the Farm Bill as a whole so folks understand a little bit more about this consequential legislation?
Right. And thank you, Meredith. Like you, I'm very honored to be part of this panel. And thank you to all who are joining us live or who might be watching a recording of us. We're providing our updates with the information that we're trying to keep up with that are as current as possible. And things are changing. But as talking about change, and I try to change to my screen, I will just say that this lame duck, as Meredith said, will be a time of change. And so we do have things at stake. And let's just kind of give it a quick bit about the Alliance to End Hunger, for which I'm very proud to be working now, is is an organization that brings together diverse sectors and diverse voices to end hunger in our generation. We do this through many organizations who are members, over 100 strong, over 50 state and local hunger-free communities, and through advocacy like we are doing today. So, yeah, people who are working on this Farm Bill started out saying, oh, it'll be the 2023 Farm Bill, and then it'll be the 2024 Farm Bill. And it generally does take, they usually are implemented for 5 years. So the 2018 Farm Bill, the bipartisan Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018, was signed into law now 6 years ago by the 45th president. In 2023, a new bill wasn't around, so the 2018 bill was extended for a year through the end of September of 2024. And at the end of December 2024, some programs, especially agricultural and dairy programs, will expire and start to revert to older versions unless it's extended again or there's a new bill passed. So the Farm Bill brings together, unites the people who grow our food and we, the people who eat the food, which is everyone. It is a big gathering of a lot of programs and funding and supports for the people who grow food and the people who eat it. The last Farm Bill was over 1,000 pages long. And like a really long book, the Farm Bill is divided into chapters. They're called titles. And for most of us working in the food and nutrition area, Title IV is a place where most of the programs that we work for, care deeply about, are housed. The largest one is our nation's most important federal nutrition program. Reaches people in our country who most need help with accessing enough healthy food to eat every day. It reaches over 42 million people each month. And a really important thing I think to remember is that 4 out of 5 households who participate in SNAP include either a child, an elderly person, or a person with a disability. SNAP has proven benefits. It keeps people from having to make choices like eat or get medicine, for example, and lifts people out of poverty, benefits the economy. Other larger of the food programs include TFAP, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, that supports emergency feeding organizations serving people with low incomes, and the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, CSFP. Again, this program targeted to people who are at least 60 years old or older. The Food Distribution Program on Indian reservations is another important program in the Farm Bill that helps bring food to USDA foods to people with low incomes who live on reservation lands. We have this whole alphabet soup of programs in the Farm Bill, that we refer to in shorthand. And some of those other programs that are include GusNIP, SNAP-Ed, FFVP, and SFMNP, and nutrition research. So all of these programs, I try to bring everyone into the fold because they're all in there, and we don't maybe talk about all of them as much. But these together, all of these programs that are authorized and funded through the Farm Bill are the reason why the Farm Bill is so important. Now, regularly, there are House versions and Senate versions of the Farm Bill. They pass through each of the chambers of Congress, and then they go to conference committee. Then there's another vote on the changed bill, the conference version, and then it would be signed into law, and then it heads to the administration. But so far in this chart, we're still where that red dot is, in that in the House, there was a Farm Bill and it passed out of committee. But through a regular type of order, there's still a long way and many steps to go if that's the way that Congress chooses to move a Farm Bill. So that is why the lame duck or beyond will become important to our work here. As Meredith said, our voices being very important. And so I will turn it back over to Meredith.
Great, thank you, Karen. I appreciate the visuals and walk
complicated legislation.
So as we think about the kind of Farm Bill and the prospects in Congress, I'm so thrilled that Maureen is able to join us today to really kind of ground us in why this matters to folks in local communities, and bringing her expertise to make sure we're front and center with what policymakers should be focused on. So Maureen, tell us a little bit more about how you're thinking about this debate.
Yeah, thank you so much, Meredith, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on an issue that's really personal to myself and so many others in my community, as well as communities throughout our nation. As Meredith said, my name is Maureen, and I'm a social worker and political advocate. And I'm someone who has lived through the struggles of poverty. And so today I just want to share my journey and explain how cuts to the Farm Bill will impact families on the ground and individuals in Kentucky and throughout our nation, especially in terms of food assistance. So I didn't start my career with the idea of becoming a political advocate or a social worker. My journey began as a stay-at-home mom and wife, a choice that was rooted in traditional U.S. values. And that was after having previously worked for years in retail management. But unfortunately, my relationship became abusive, turning into a dangerous situation that forced me to leave for the safety of myself and my children. Walking away was a life or death decision, and I made it without any financial resources of my own to fall back on. So I suddenly found myself in a position that I never expected, rebuilding my life alone with 3 children depending on me. And that was when I made the choice to go back to school. I knew education could open doors, so I started my journey at community college, eventually earning my master's degree in social work. And that was at the University of Kentucky. I didn't do this alone, though. There's no way I could have gotten through that without support from programs like the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, which many still call food stamps. SNAP was an essential piece in helping me through those difficult times. It gave me the stability that I needed to focus on my education and being successful in that, and focus on the well-being of myself and my children without the constant fear of hunger. So the Farm Bill and SNAP's role in fighting poverty means that, the support I received through SNAP wasn't unique to me. It's a lifeline for many people in Kentucky and throughout our nation. Here in Kentucky, 1 in 5 people experience food insecurity. SNAP, which is funded through the Farm Bill, is one of the most effective tools we have in fighting poverty. It's designed to ensure that those with the lowest incomes have access to basic necessities like food. But right now, this critical program is under threat. Proposed cuts to the Farm Bill could slash SNAP funding, directly impacting those who rely on it most. When we talk about cutting the Farm Bill, we're not just discussing an abstract budget issue. We're talking about taking food off of people's tables. We're talking about food that could have been taken off of my table. In Kentucky, more than 500,000 people rely on SNAP benefits, including children, seniors, and disabled individuals. Cuts to this program could mean that families across the state would have to skip meals or buy cheaper, less nutritious food, worsening health outcomes in a state that already struggles with high rates of chronic disease. One of the most common misconceptions about SNAP is that it encourages dependency, but in my experience and from the data that I've seen as an advocate, this isn't true. Most SNAP recipients are either working low-wage jobs, disabled, elderly, or caring for young children. For those who can work, SNAP is often a temporary support system that provides the stability they need to move towards self-sufficiency. If we weaken that support, we risk pushing people further into poverty rather than helping them climb out of it. So there's an economic ripple effect. This looks like the issue that people often overlook. When people and families in Kentucky receive SNAP benefits, they spend them at local grocery stores, farmers markets, and businesses, boosting our economy. Every dollar spent through SNAP generates about $1.50 in economic activity. Cutting these benefits doesn't just harm individuals, it hurts communities, particularly rural areas where food insecurity is highest. When SNAP benefits are reduced, it strains other community resources like food banks and shelters, which are already stretched thin. Many of these organizations rely on donations and are not equipped to handle the influx of people who lose SNAP support. Cutting SNAP might look like a way to save money on paper, but it actually leads to increased costs in healthcare, emergency services, and other areas. So, as someone who's both benefited from SNAP and who now works to support others in similar situations, it's my urge to our leaders and to you as constituents to consider the real life impacts of these cuts. This isn't about numbers or spreadsheets. It's about people's ability to survive, to thrive, to contribute to our society. We need a strong farm bill that invests in people, not one that forces families to make impossible choices. I've seen firsthand how programs like SNAP can change lives. They're not a handout, they're a helping hand. And that's why we all need, at some point in our lives, a little help, a little support, a little compassion. And I'm here today not only to share my story, to remind us all that poverty is not an individual failure, it's a systemic issue. And we all have a role to play in solving it. So thank you so much for listening. And I hope my story, which is similar to the stories of thousands of Kentuckians and United States citizens, I hope it resonates with you today. So let's work together to protect SNAP and to preserve the Farm Bill and to ensure that everyone in our nation has the food security they deserve. Because when we support one another, when we lift each other up, our entire community thrives. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. I wish all 435 members of the U.S. House of Representatives and our 100 senators had listened to you right now. Hopefully there are some lurking in here. We don't know for sure, but just really powerful. Thank you for both lending your expertise that's based on, what you're seeing in your community, the experiences of your family, and the research that you've done. I do really think what you said about it's not numbers and spreadsheets, though. This is about people. So thanks, Maureen. It's such an honor to be in space with you today. And lots of love for you, by the way, in the chat. So make sure you check that out. All right. Well, then, now that we are grounded in why this matters, Ellen Nissenbaum, tell us what is happening and how we can make a difference.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I really appreciate being with all of you. And as always, so deeply moved by Maureen. I'm going to move quickly. I understand that all the PowerPoints will be made available, but I want to be able to share with you some important information based on what we know and what does that mean for getting ready as we look not just at what's lame duck, but the year ahead. Let me just quickly mention, and we'll just go through a couple of PowerPoints that we could start now, Karen, on lame duck. Okay, so in lame duck, there's really only one or two things that we are really focused on. There will be a disaster package, which is important for our friends in the states that were affected by the storms. We are hoping for funding for TFAP. We're hoping for funding to help with immediate needs on childcare and housing, a number of other things. So I think there will be a bipartisan agreement on disaster relief. The appropriations bills have not been finished. It doesn't seem likely at this point that Congress will finish all those bills, and they only would have two choices. They could do a short-term extension into early next year and try to wrap them up. That is not what we are hearing from Republicans they will do, but they could also just take all of the current spending levels and appropriations and just do what we call a full year continuing resolution. So funding for all programs would be frozen for the fiscal year that started in October and goes through the end of September. I do want to mention specifically around the Farm Bill and one particular issue. The Farm Bill could go two different ways right now. The four leaders of the Farm Bill, the Democrat and Republican leaders, are still saying they would like to get a deal. They would like to get this done. It doesn't get easier for them to do it next year. But there have been a number of Republican statements from some of the Republicans leading this effort that they really think that what will end up happening is a one-year extension. Why would they do a one-year extension? Because Republicans will control the House and Senate next year. They will have more power, and therefore they believe they can produce a farm bill that is more to their liking. Now, the only way they would get a farm bill done in lame duck now is if House Republicans drop, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, the deep cut in future SNAP benefits that would affect all households. There is no way that the two Democratic leaders of the House and Senate Ag committees will accept that. We've, as a community, been talking all year that no bill is better than a bad bill. So that's the only way they get an agreement. And I think it is probably not unlikely that they end up just doing a one-year farm bill. I do want to just mention very quickly that some of you may be aware that a terrible development has been emerging in SNAP over the last year, and that is a new criminal effort that uses technology to what's called skim or steal SNAP benefits out of people's accounts. There have been very significant numbers, thousands and thousands of families in almost every state in the country who have had their SNAP benefits, some of their SNAP benefits stolen. There's a provision in the current spending bill that continues until the end of December that requires states to replace those benefits. If that expires and is not continued, then it is widely understood that thousands of innocent low-income families, nobody's exempt here, right? Everybody is being hit by this criminal effort. People will have their benefits stolen and not replaced. So in many ways, the single most important hunger priority in lame duck, depending on what they do in the Farm Bill, is to make sure that provision is extended that would require states to continue to replace stolen benefits. So that is really important. We want to keep our eye on that. Okay, next slide. So I just want to spend a minute on what was really the big issue in the House Farm Bill, because it isn't just a threat in the Farm Bill, as I'll explain in a minute. It's a threat in other vehicles next year. And that is, many of you know that the SNAP program is the benefit is calculated on the basis of something called the Thrifty Food Plan. It's a complicated model. It's a formula that makes sure that you're factoring in the cost of food, nutritional standards, dietary updates, consumption patterns. It's really the basis upon which we try to make sure that SNAP is providing an adequate level of benefits. But other than inflation, SNAP benefits have not been adjusted upward for 50 years until 2021. The 2018 Farm Bill recognized how woefully inadequate SNAP benefits are. And it said to USDA, you should update those benefits to make sure they are more in keeping with those other factors. And we don't want to fall back over and over again. So you should periodically update the Thrifty Food Plan to keep SNAP benefits current. So what the Republicans have proposed in the House Farm Bill, and what many Republicans in the Senate are also supporting, is to say we're not going to touch the update that happened that boosted SNAP benefits, but we are going to ensure that future updates cannot have a cost. That's what we mean by cost neutral in my last bullet. Well, if you're going to update SNAP benefits and it can't cost anything, guess what? You're not keeping SNAP benefits up to date with dietary standards and other things. And it's effectively a $30 billion cut in future SNAP benefits that would affect all beneficiaries. Next slide, please. So just to show you super fast, you can see that under the revision that was done in 2021, we would all like to see SNAP benefits much higher than $6.20 per person a day, but that is not an insignificant increase. That increase in the Thrifty lifted almost 2.5 million people out of poverty, including 1 million kids. It reduced the depth of poverty for 20 million, and it certainly reduced food insecurity. So it was very impactful in what was done. Okay, next slide, thanks. Nope, not that one, the next one, sorry, we'll just skip right. Okay, so I just want to draw your attention to the who is affected by this cut. If you are households with children, of that $30 billion cut in future benefits, over half of that would be taking benefits away relative to current law from families with kids. And $5 billion of that would be older Americans, seniors who would lose benefits. So you can see the dollar. So it is a very significant thing. Cost neutral sounds innocuous, right? It doesn't convey the harm of this proposal. And again, this is not something that we could only see in the Farm Bill. Okay, let's turn to 2025, spend my last couple of minutes on that. Now, I want to be very clear. There's a lot about 2025 we don't know, but we do know some preliminary things. There's some indications, there's some statements from Republican leaders about what they're going to do. And what we are specifically clear about is that the Farm Bill is not the only venue in which the SNAP program could see very significant cuts and harmful changes. Even if they finish a Farm Bill in lame duck, SNAP is at tremendous risk. And if they don't finish a Farm Bill, it's one of things. So right off the bat, the leaders of the new Congress are talking about passing a tax bill that will use a special process called reconciliation, which is just a fancy term for saying they will move a bill in the Senate that can't be filibustered and only needs 50 votes. So it only needs Republican votes to pass. And there have already been press reports that this tax bill, which will extend all of the expiring Trump tax cuts that mostly benefit upper income households and corporations, there's already been reports that they could put a SNAP cut in that package. Congress has to raise the debt ceiling later. That is simply a legal mechanism to allow the federal government to borrow to pay the bills it already owes. It doesn't increase the deficit. That has become in the past a vehicle for SNAP changes. In 2023, they agreed to increase SNAP work requirements in order to pass a debt ceiling and not default. And there are other vehicles here. We know that even in appropriations, there have been policy changes made that have been harmful to SNAP. So this is something I'm also using when we talk to healthcare people. These are the same vehicles that would hurt Medicaid. It is worth saying, I think, as hunger advocates, we don't just want to focus on SNAP. If there are harmful cuts and changes to Medicaid, then people may not have as much for food if they have to spend more money on health. Where if there are cuts in both of these programs, people may need more help to buy food and their health may be dramatically sacrificed. So we know the importance of nutrition to health status, and we know the importance of people being able to get affordable health care to make sure they have enough money for their diet. Okay, let's move to the next one. Again, I'm not going to go through all of this because you'll have access, but what do we mean by threats to SNAP? Well, the thing we worry the most about are big changes to the structure of SNAP, things that would be hard to come back and undo down the line. So work requirements is a very clear example. If they deepen the already harsh work requirements in SNAP, those may be very difficult to undo down the road. If they were to take the SNAP entitlement that guarantees each individual who is eligible will get those benefits, if they were to limit that or convert it to a block grant, those would be very devastating. They can change eligibility. There's a range of things they could do in SNAP, again, in any of these vehicles. And as I said, some of these vehicles will start to move early in the year. I think we have to understand that 2025 is a year that throughout the year, we will see vehicles that are moving to which SNAP cuts and changes could be added, starting with this tax reconciliation bill, moving into dealing with the debt ceiling that has to happen before the summer or the government would default, thinking about the appropriations process and other budget bills. So we have to be really able to hunker down, but we also have to start preparing now. I would note that some of the bills that are going to move next year may require 60 votes, not 50 votes. So let me move to the last slide. And that is, there are two kinds of bills when we think about the Senate that will come up. One are bills where they only need a simple majority, like a reconciliation bill. And in those bills, Democrats will have very little role to play whatsoever. Then there are other bills that will need 60 votes because of the rules of the Senate. The new Republican leader, John Thune from South Dakota, announced yesterday they're not going to get rid of the filibuster. So that will, unless that changes, there will still be many bills that have to pass by 60 votes, including potentially the farm bill and debt ceiling. So here's an example. If they don't change the rules, then it is very likely that the farm bill would move as a freestanding bill in the House and Senate, and Republicans are going to need Democratic votes to pass that bill. That means Democrats have leverage. That means Democrats who could make up those votes on the farm bill need to be hearing from us starting in December that going into next year, they have to be willing to be clear. They will not support SNAP cuts and harmful changes in any vehicle. There are moderate Republicans who can play a role. But even let's take a bill that only needs 50 votes. So Democrats are not a part of that. If there's a bill like a reconciliation bill, those are the ones that only need 50. There is a way we hope to work with Republicans so that they are working behind the scenes as those bills are being written to try to say they don't want to support any SNAP cuts. They don't want to support something that will take nutrition away or healthcare away from poor families. So there are, albeit limited in some cases, there are things we as advocates can do to educate people about what these proposed policy changes and cuts would do. There are ways to work with people who care about children and elderly and disabled and others to try to block the harm or minimize the harm as much as we can. Probably not a lot of opportunities for policy gains in the year ahead. I did mention the child tax credit. But those are, I think, the top things, and I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Ellen. That was incredibly helpful, sobering, but also we need to remember while we strive for a vision of of changing systems, as Maureen said, and a country that ensures that everyone can put food on the table. While our bigger vision, we still kind of are going for the vision of ending hunger, that there are some real fights and that our advocacy can make a difference. Karen, can you share resources in terms of what folks can do that the Alliance has for folks on this call, on this session?
Yes. So no matter if you're part of a group that affiliates with various other national organizations or the Alliance to End Hunger or one of your state-based healthy communities coalitions with the Coalition on Human Needs, for example. A lot of advocacy groups are going to be putting out action alerts. It's time. This is an important time for you to weigh in. And so I did just want to talk about a little bit about some of the priorities that many of us have been advocating for now a couple of years or so. Oh, okay, I'm going the wrong way. Okay, excuse me, and while I get to the right point. So as Senator Stabenow said this morning, as we heard from Maureen, as we heard from Ellen, it's really, we've been going at this. You might be feeling a little weary about like, oh, Farm Bill, oh, time again. Well, now it's really even more important to double down and make our voices heard. It's especially true for people who live in the districts where members of Congress, their constituents, the people who vote for them or have the opportunity to vote for them, the constituent voices matter. As we heard from Maureen, when people with lived experience share their stories with our support as advocates, they are extremely powerful in how a helping hand helped them. And now oftentimes, it's lifting each other up and continuing to help others. Organizations and, again, private industry and public. So all of those groups, all of us have a role to play in ending hunger. Some of the things that we have been advocating on, Ellen spoke very well to the importance of the Thrifty Food Plan reevaluation and how continuing to reevaluate that on a regular basis will not lead to this large increases, but regular maintenance. We had deferred maintenance on the SNAP benefit level for 50 years. So regular maintenance will keep those kinds of price shocks from happening again. We are advocating to prevent those unnecessary losses of SNAP benefits through the Farm Bill. The technology is being improved by states and by USDA, but it's not there yet. So we need to do both things in keeping the technology advances going and to be able to replace those benefits that were stolen. We have advocacy priorities under TFAP and Commodity Supplemental Food Program, continuing to get the power back to tribal nations for their self-administration of the programs, and the GusNIP program to help make sure that kinds of nutrition incentives, that and SNAP education that help people choose healthier diets with the benefits that are provided. Those are the kinds of things that we need to keep talking about and keep raising, as well as the new things, the new proposals that come about. And they may not just come about through a Farm Bill. As Ellen stated, there are several different ways. So all of us to keep talking to one another in our groups when we hear or see things that could be a threat, to let each other know in our groups and to respond and use our voices to say, no cuts. Let's keep moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Karen. And I know, Maureen, I know that you've been engaged in taking action on this issue. And I think in the Q&A box, you might have added a resource. Anything you want to say out loud about how what advocates can do, including people who have the expertise of participating in SNAP or have participated in SNAP in the past?
Yeah, so in the question and answer section, I answered Minerva's question just with a link, and I might need to, it looks like it might be private, I'm not sure, but it's a link to the Results Action Center in which Results has it laid out so you can see all of the issues that might be important to you. including issues on SNAP, Medicaid, issues surrounding the Farm Bill as a whole, and other issues that we focus on that are anti-poverty related. And the Action Center with Results makes taking action and advocating on those issues that are important very easy and seamless. So let me know if that link posted publicly, please.
And let
Yeah,
me just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'll just note I put it in the session chat, so folks should be able to access it that way
Okay.
too. And one thing I'll flag specifically that Maureen, for instance, has done a great job is also, sharing stories in the media. There's tools. Results has some template tools to do that on the Action Center, but there's longer pieces that, for instance, Maureen has had published where really getting into more detail about the program and why it matters. So that's another way to raise our voices. Ellen?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so I'm a little confused about what's private now. Minerva asked a good question, which is, what's the ask for Farm Bill and lame duck? I mean, if we could wave our magic wand, and there's no reason we couldn't say this to policymakers, they should finish the Farm Bill without any cuts or harmful changes to SNAP, period. End of story, right? If the only way to get a Farm Bill in lame duck is with a SNAP cut, then we don't want a Farm Bill. So what we can say is you should finish the Farm Bill, and that Farm Bill should not include any harmful cuts to SNAP. And if the response back to that is that's not possible, then we should want to be for an extension, because they'll just extend the current Farm Bill. They won't put harmful changes in a 1-year extension. They could actually get this Farm Bill done if they wanted. In many ways, it would be safer if we could get it done. But we just want to be honest with ourselves that even if they do a Farm Bill in lame duck, they finish it and there are no SNAP cuts, that does not mean that the Thrifty Food Plan and other harmful cuts and changes to SNAP are not at very significant risk.
Thank you, Ellen. I was going to lift up that point. There are a lot of consequential decisions, and this is where staying in community with each other, in regular communication with the Alliance to End Hunger and other organizations will be critical, because there could be a lot of things, a lot of proposals, a lot of legislation moving fast over the coming weeks and months. And we're going to need to be vigilant about sharing why these programs impact how they impact our community, and standing firm and pushing back against those proposals that will take food off the table. So maybe what I'll do, because I know we're close to end of time, anything kind of short responses, please, from our panelists. Anything you wish that policymakers understood as they're making these important decisions, like in a sentence or two? What's something you wish they knew that they are clearly not registering right now?
I mean, I guess I would say, there's been a lot of talk in the campaign about people struggling to make ends meet, about people struggling to be able to get their basic needs met. We must be able to ensure that people are getting an adequate diet, that they're getting affordable healthcare and housing. The vast majority of people on SNAP who can work are doing so. But there are millions of people on SNAP, children, people with disabilities, and elderly, who need this assistance and are not able to work. We know that investing in children's nutritional well-being has long-term positive gains that redound to the benefit of community and the economy. And whether it's the long-term fiscal challenges that we really do face in the country, cutting SNAP, making it harder for people to get what they need, is not either the answer or an acceptable outcome.
Great, thanks, Ellen. Maureen, anything you would offer as quick parting words?
Yeah, I'll just resonate that. That has been my main ask throughout all of my advocacy related to the Farm Bill, is just at the very bare minimum, we cannot make cuts to the Farm Bill. That's the bare minimum. But in reality, we need improvements and additional funding, because people are still struggling on the ground. Thank you.
Karen. Yeah, thank you, Maureen. Karen, anything you'd share to close us out?
Thank you all so much for being here. Inspirational, all of you. Thank you for all your work. And everyone in the audience,
Yeah.
listen, take action.